And we're live. Yeah, you got me on the phone. Just tweeting out the audio-only link for this. If that's your thing, if you don't want to see us bright-eyed and bushy-tailed of a Monday/Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday morning, Adrian Barry's here on a Friday. I'd understand if you want to make the audio-only thing work for that. To get us on offtheball.com, but if you want to see us in glorious Technicolor, then youtube.com/offtheball. Click on your subscriptions, and every time we go live, I've got to hit tweet for that one to work. Every time we go live, we'll be here. How are you, Owen?
Very well.
Excited?
Excited about what? I'm
alive.
not sure, but alive and high on life. I feel like there's just a little bit too much blood in my hurling system at the moment. Just a complete overload on the small ball.
Ian Lynch's blood. Did you see it yesterday?
Yeah.
His finger was covered. I was like, his finger's chopped off. And I was like, no, he just wiped his cheek. There was a gash in his cheek through his helmet. And there was this kind of moment where somebody on the sideline who was clearly an official was like, no, he's got to get that fixed. And he's like, I'm getting back out there. And sure, he was back out there like less than a minute later. I don't know if they'd stapled his face shut or something.
Probably did.
But he's my new hero.
Yeah, well,
I'm all in. There's my pile of chips, and I'm pushing them into the middle. And wherever Cian Lynch is going this year, I'm following him.
Yeah, it's kind of like Billy Elliott turning into Rambo. Like, he was always the skillful inside forward, very nice player. And then suddenly they move him out to midfield, and he can mix it with the men. You know, he can throw a shoulder, he can clearly take a hit.
And
having a scorer around midfield is obviously going to give Limerick a whole new weapon this year. But yeah, as I say, I mean, we've got a new hard man on our hands here, and nobody expected it.
I think as well, all of these teams are going to get way better as the season progresses, if they get any momentum behind them. Like the wides that Limerick had, there was one brilliant piece of chess that they played where they just moved the ball up 20-yard pass, diagonal, and then it was like one of the worst wides you've ever seen. You're like, oh, Jesus Christ. But when that starts working, they're going to look like one of the greatest teams that we've ever seen. I don't know, I'm going to toot my own trumpet here. On the Hurling show on Friday afternoon, I did predict that Limerick were my pick in that game, because based entirely off nothing other than being at the under 21 awards last year. We did a live broadcast from it on Facebook, and there were loads of Limerick lads in the room, and they were big. And they were like, oh, you've already played senior, I know your name. Yeah, I remember you now from the under 20s. And I was like, under 21s. I was like, yeah, they were big out lads. And I thought, right, something's happening here. And they were self-confident, and they was just like, they were kind of easy in their surrounds. It means nothing, obviously. It was like an off-season awards do, but there was just a sense that, I don't know. And then they delivered, and you're like, whew, that worked out.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's not like you would have looked stupid or anything. You would have just looked like a bit of a maverick had they actually lost yesterday. It is a huge result for Limerick. Let's not get away from this fact here. Every win is a big one, and people will always kind of throw around the idea that, oh, it's not knockout Munster Championship. Well, in actual fact, it is direct knockout if you don't finish in the top three. There is no backdoor if you don't finish in the top three, and every game counts, particularly your home games. In a weird way, a loss for Limerick yesterday would have been far more detrimental than a loss for Tipperary, considering they've still got 2 games in third as to come.
They did seem to be kind of misinterpreting that on the live coverage yesterday. I didn't say much the evening show, but they were like, it doesn't really matter.
It does matter.
It matters doubly here a little bit, because, like, as you say, there's no real safety net once this round robin is over. What about the what? What about the ban? Oh, the media ban, yeah. So that's Tommy in my ear as the slitter is in Michael Ryan's ear there. It's an unfortunate photograph, which the Examiner helpfully used. It's on the back of all the newspapers. I hadn't checked the back of the end of there as well. So Michael Ryan didn't speak to the media afterwards, and he's not going to speak to them for the duration of the round robin series. Speculation in the papers that it was a direct response to the result. I don't know if it was. I wouldn't be terribly surprised if that was a decision that they'd taken in advance, and that it looks worse
because they lost.
Yeah. Now, a couple of things struck me afterwards. Potentially something's going on that we don't know about. Potentially there's proper unrest in the camp. Maybe there is some kind of Limerick football scenario brewing in the background. Maybe there is some kind of Offaly scenario brewing in the background that we're just like, and he's like, no one's breaking ranks, no one's saying anything. That way we're trying to maintain it. Because he hasn't spoken, because nobody from the team is speaking, suddenly wild speculation fills the gap, and it's like, what's going on there? I wonder what the... Before we move on to the coming up, right? 2 months ago, you were at the Kerry Monaghan game?
Oh, the tooting our own trumpet brigade has got into full flow this morning. Thank you very much, sir. So basically, to anybody who's been saying this week that Rory Beggan is the best goalkeeper in the country, you're too late. I've been on this for months and months, from all the way back to early this year when Monaghan beat Kerry in Enniskeane. I think I said in this programme, well, I just kind of pondered, are we completely sure that Stephen Cluxton is the best goalkeeper in the country? Are we sure that Rory Beggan, with his kickouts, has not only hit his target on the head, but hit the very blade of grass he wants to hit, directly on the head of the blade of grass, so that it bounces beautifully in front of whoever the runner is, so that Monaghan can kickstart an attack from the edge of their own half of the pitch. He's a beautiful kicker of the ball, a beautiful sweeper when he wants to be, and a great scoring threat for Monaghan, a huge weapon in yesterday's win against Tyrone. And there is a huge argument right now that he is the best goalkeeper in the country. And
maybe the best kicker of a 50 that there's ever been. Dave McIntyre was like, there's no effort. Even Maurice Fitz looked like he was making an effort.
Yeah, well, and maybe Maurice Fitz was pretending because he found it so easy, but the least Rory Beggan can do is pretend that it's hard to kick a 50. He's just like stroking him over the bar, like, you know, I don't really care about any of this stuff. Like, we were kind of taken aback by Niall Morgan a few years ago when he was doing this sort of stuff. Rory Beggan has taken that model and completely crushed it. And I said, no, I am far better than Niall Morgan ever was at this. I'm better than Stephen Cluxton ever was at pinging the ball over the bar. And I think he's a better goal kicker, better kickouts than Stephen Cluxton is. If he was playing for Dublin, I don't think there would be a debate here.
My conspiracy theory is that games like this aren't being televised at the minute to create this massive sense of desire for us to have our own full-time permanent GAA channel, and that actually this is the pent-up desire that everybody's like, why can't we watch this? Why can't we watch it? It's creating the necessary market conditions for us all to go, yeah, I'll pay £10 a month to watch GAA.
Yeah, it was like...
Because we'd all pay a £10 a month to be able to watch that.
Without question. Absolutely no question about that. It is amusing, though, that people were complaining that Monaghan Tyrone wasn't being televised yesterday, given what it was up against. I mean, it's the Munster Hurling Championship. It is the best competition that the GAA has to offer.
You should be able to flick between them. And then it was delayed for so much. It was almost like, ooh, this could be the perfect... Are we going to get to watch the end of this?
That would have been
Maybe
cool.
They can flick over and we can see the last 10 minutes of it.
Yeah, now that would be an idea. But I mean, just concurrently making the decision, I think you've got to pick the Munster Hurling Championship yesterday. You absolutely do. And Tyrone Monaghan, I think it's fair to say, was a better game than a lot of people might have expected.
Yeah.
So a number of factors there. Saturday night, live on TV, would have been the correct answer, obviously.
Is he the Irish Ederson? Asks Daniel J. Brady about Rory Beggan. Good question. What's coming up on the show? Well, it's a busy day, as you can imagine. We're going to talk the FA Cup final and what kind of off-season Manchester United need to have with Andy Mitten a little bit later on, after they were embarrassed a little bit by Chelsea in one of the most boring cup finals. I'm not going to lie, I did not watch the cup final.
Well, go through that and then keep going through that for a minute.
Matt Williams and Alan Quinlan are going to join us after Munster failed to beat Leinster at the weekend, and Leinster roll on to the Pro 14 final in the Aviva next weekend against the Scarlets. Another match at the Scarlets, hopefully in glorious sunshine as well, after the quarterfinals, semi-finals that they beat them in a little bit earlier on this year. And what the hell comes next for Munster, and just how good are this Leinster team, considering they were shorn of many of their starters at the weekend and still managed to win that game. And it was relatively comfortable. I mean, we'll have that debate a little bit later on about how comfortable it was, but it certainly felt a bit comfortable. And in hurling, we'll talk with Jamesy O'Connor about the opening of the hurling championship in Munster. First time we've got to see those teams in action. We'll talk as well about more heartbreak for the Dublin hurlers. But if there's any of the other stories that you want to talk to us about, then don't worry, we're going to cover them in our roundup, because... Well, Tyrone got beat. Armagh got beaten by Rory Gallagher. The stat, which I completely missed, was that Kieran McGeeney has never won an Ulster championship match in 4 years of trying as the Armagh manager.
Oh my God, that's not real, is it?
I read it this morning, unless somebody just made it up. I mean, I didn't double check it because it seems entirely plausible. Has he?
That is absolutely incredible.
Now you're making me doubt myself.
I don't even remember their qualifier run last year, but that must have been one hell of a qualifier run to get all the way through the back door after not winning a single.
It's true, Tommy says, making me doubt myself.
That is absolutely astonishing, and that just makes their achievement of getting to Cork Park last year all the better.
Let's get to the sports pages.
OTB AM.
In association with Air. Get Air Sport free with Air Broadband.
Right. The order of these is a bit of a mystery to me because I forgot to check them. The Irish Independent is where we're going to start. Silent Ryan in the line of fire. Silent Ryan. Saving Private Ryan. Line of fire. Are they trying to
It's kind of like semi-rhyming, isn't it? It's
Ryan, fire, line. Anyway, yeah. Tony Ward, Munster need a new out half to address midfield crisis. And is that a picture of Joey Carberry beside it? It's almost as if we've been talking about this for a whole week. Emotional end to Roche's Giro. So Nicholas Roche is out of the Giro d'Italia. The stage finished at the same point where his dad disobeyed team orders in 1987 to beat Roberto Vicentini, who was his team leader at Carrera at the time. And so, it was a symbolic end for Nico and a very important piece of track from his dad's perspective. So I'll bring you the next one from me is going to be, that's the wrong document there, Times Ireland. So Times Ireland, Flynn and Dublin suffer agonies. This is a brilliant picture there of Liam Rush about to tackle Sean Murphy, but obviously the main concern over the weekend was the injury for Robbie O'Flynn. All the newspapers are reporting that it is a concussion, that he was kept in hospital in CUH last night as a precautionary measure. This was a clash of heads with a teammate, which ultimately saw about 11 minutes being played at the end of the Cork Clare game, but it looks like he's okay, and they took all the precautions necessary and they were very careful about it, so that was a good sign. On to the Irish Times. The Irish Times here is a picture from the Limerick tip game. Revamped Munster Championship ignites, and Leinster stay on double trail as Ulster salvage season. The Ulster season being salvaged resulted in an all-time classic post-match interview with Jono Gibbs, which we'll bring you a little bit later on from BBC. Very angry BBC reporter who was not taking any shit from Jono Gibbs. Batman kickstarts round robin. That's a headline.
There it is.
There you go.
There, top of the morning to you.
A couple of Batman finishes, two brilliant finishes in the Cork match as well. But there you go. Limerick Young Guns off and running as Murphy goal sinks tip. So that was the Limerick cover from the Examiner. The Cork cover this morning is Jump Start, late Harnedy goal, sees off banner as Cork eye tip test. Brilliant coverage from the Examiner this morning. And so they obviously have the Limerick manager on the top of that one, and I think it's Harnedy himself celebrating with his helmet off at full time on the Limerick version. So fair play to the Examiner, two covers. I wonder will that continue when the Irish Times get their hands on it. I hope it does. I really hope that the Irish Times treat the Examiner properly.
Yeah, I'm sure, I wonder if there's some people who actually keep these sports sections to mark a big championship. I'd say they probably do.
If you're family of any of the people involved, absolutely, yeah. Or if you're a mad Limerick hurling fan, it's like you're getting all the newspapers this morning. The Irish Daily Mail, furious José Mourinho in a rage over Stars missing final. Who cares, José Mourinho? Like seriously, it's hard to care too much about José Mourinho's inchoate even rage. Pissed off that Lukaku and Fellaini didn't declare themselves fit in time for the game.
He was so humble after the match. He was interviewed by Dan Walker, and Dan Walker kind of gave him the opportunity to show how humble he was, and he was like, I've seen you been shaking hands with all your Chelsea counterparts, and he's like, yeah, I congratulated them because they won, but they shouldn't have won because we should have won. And it's like, good old humble Jose, gives you a bit of that, eats a little bit of that humble pine and spits it right back out in the interviewer's face. That's how José Mourinho operates. It was it's just a classic, kind of final furlong from José Mourinho, which I greatly enjoyed.
Dublin can still make playoffs on Cis Gilroy. Pat Gilroy's Dublin side are staring down the barrel of relegation from the Leinster Championship after a second successive narrow defeat, but he insists his team can still make the top three in the province. They'd obviously have to beat Galway and Offaly and hope that points get dropped along the way by other teams. So it's very unlikely to happen at this point, but there's no way that Dublin team are getting relegated. They've obviously got a game plan, a structure, a team playing. And Dottie O'Callaghan was in studio here speaking with Dave on Saturday, and he was just making the point that it looks like everybody is on board at this point, so that really works. And
I'm still going to watch that Dublin Offaly game, presuming it's televised. Like, by no means is this a complete cakewalk for Dublin.
I don't think it's going to be televised. Be amazed.
Probably not. I will catch you on whatever radio station it's on. Like, Midlands will probably have it. Whatever it is, that's not a game that you kind of look at and it's like, right, Dublin could be in a position here where they might have beaten Kilkenny, blah, 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 might have beaten Wexford, could probably go close against Galway. Who knows how that game's going to turn out. I know Offaly have been comfortably beaten in both of the games, but it hasn't been...
In fairness, I thought it was going to be one-way traffic for Offaly, but they were 9 points down with 9 minutes left and they got it back to 3 with 3 minutes left, so they fought their way back into the game, and then another late Liam Blanchfield goal broke their hearts, and they finished 9 points in the end. So not by any means a disgrace from Offaly's perspective. Kilkenny, it seems, were resting players. Walter Walsh didn't play any part in the game, although he was named, which never happens in Brian Cody's time. So anyway, that's the crack for me.
Yeah, on the back of the Herald this morning, it is with that Dublin hurling story that they're leading with. Gilroy is keeping faith, reads the headline here. Pointless Dubs can qualify for All-Ireland series, starting with a win over Offaly. You've also got O'Neill hints over supple Irish call-up. This is Aidan Fitzmaurice's story here in Glasgow that Shane Supple could be in line for a call-up to the Ireland squad for the 2 international friendlies, which would be an interesting development in the keeper department for the Republic of Ireland. The back of the Mirror, meanwhile, is leading with the hurling as well. Private Ryan is the headline here. Tip boss Michael's vow of silence after a woeful display. Now, that's the correct headline.
Yeah, it is. They were like, there's definitely the name of a film in here somewhere. What is it? Silence of the Lambs? What?
There's no such thing as a correct answer when it comes to headline writing, but this is the correct answer. On the back of the Irish Daily Star this morning, the treaty are tip-top, reads Shane Stapleton's match report. €110 million then is the other story here. Pep plots Hazard move. It's an exclusive by Jeremy Cross here, that Eden Hazard could be on his way to Manchester City next season. It is silly season. The World Cup will thankfully kind of provide a good kind of stop to the flow of stories that may turn out to be untrue. This isn't entirely implausible, of course, that Eden Hazard could go to Manchester City. Whether or not it is true remains to be seen.
Did you see the other news about Chelsea over the weekend, that Roman Abramovich's visa for the UK has run out and has yet to be renewed by the Foreign Office? Apparently this is something to do with the Anglo-Russian row that's going on at the moment with respect to the poisoning or non-poisoning, depending on what mainstream media source you read. So it'll be interesting to see, because I wouldn't have said that automatically Abramovich was in the Putin camp, and that this wouldn't necessarily... Putin's like, I don't care. What's that got to do with me? Really, nothing to do with me. Actually, we're not buddies. It's kind of the opposite here. But thanks for making him have to be over this part of the world.
I'm greatly looking forward to all the Chelsea fans becoming geopolitical supporters now, where it's like, we need to improve Anglo-Russian relations ASAP, for the good of mankind, of course.
What do we want? Russia in. When do we want it? Now.
On the back of the Sun this morning, it's Wexford the Pity, also a very, very good headline there. Wexford 22 points, Dublin 214, Dubs caught. Cup winner on attack, Willian Conte pot shot.
Oh, yeah, this is classic.
Yeah, Brazilian star blasts, Blues boss. That's Andrew Dillon's story there.
So you see this, Instagram. Williams posted on Instagram. Did you miss this? There it is, there, look.
I missed this.
So you see the trophies? How many trophies can you count, Owen?
There's one, there's a second, there's 3 trophies there.
Oh, and who's behind the trophies?
There is Chelsea behind the trophies.
Antonio Conte.
Oh, sorry, there's 3 on the right hand side as well. Ah, there you go. Wow.
So there's a stack of trophies, one on top of the other. This is Willian on Instagram. This is his Instagram story. Just hours after they've won the cup. Apparently he left the ground, celebrated, but left the ground looking pretty pissed off, arrived looking pretty pissed off, and put those 3 trophies over the head, torso and legs of Antonio Conte. I was like, what a dick move.
I love the fact that Williams is pretending to be an 8-year-old boy again.
Antonio.
That is a classic. Congratulations to Willian on social media moment of the weekend. How on earth did I miss that? I'm actually just ashamed of myself. The back of the Guardian doesn't, for some reason, I'm not sure why all these papers aren't leading with Willian's Instagram post, but for some reason they've gone with other stories. The back of the Guardian goes with...
Manuel Neuer is the lead story at the back of the Guardian. Did he get like an edition that they printed sometime on Saturday afternoon?
I'm not sure. I'm a guy who likes to drive a car quite fast, in case you're wondering. Manuel Neuer and how taking risks made him the world's best keeper. I'm sure that'd be interesting if I took the time to read it. Whereas the other story, which, like, I'm sure Neuer, it's just kind of a cool picture. They actually paid a photographer to go out and spend some time with one of the world's best goalkeepers. So it's the lead photo, the lead story, really, is about Chelsea and Conte uncertainty. That's Cahill. Chelsea captain wants Italian's future to be resolved quickly, despite utterances not to the contrary, but on a different plane in the immediate aftermath on BBC on Saturday night.
Which?
Gary Cahill, chatting to the Beeb, was saying that he was asked about Conte's future, and he was like, well, you know, if that's his decision, that's the club's decision. That's the point where Gary Cahill is supposed to come out and say, we back our manager.
I do feel sorry for those people who don't have Gaelic games in their lives, particularly on a morning like this, where the lead picture is Manuel Neuer looking broody, talking about driving cars fast, as opposed to, you know, Michael Ryan taking the ball to the side of the head, or the bloodied Cian Lynch, or any of the myriad of brilliant GAA stories, or Rory Beggan landing a 45, not breaking a sweat doing it.
Or you could buy the Daily Telegraph and you could read this beautiful ad that says, "We regrow your hair, advanced singular hair grafting." So that's the other alternative here.
Darren Goff and the...
Shane Warne.
There you go.
And also, speaking of regrowing hair, there is Antonio Conte's regrown hair, kind of slick with water.
Stitched in, not regrown, but go on.
Stitched in. Broken Bridge victory, but Conte is on his way out. I think that is...
Thatched.
Thatched hair. Kind of like a cottage. He is just kind of a walking cottage at this point.
Right, so Tommy Walsh last week made the outrageous claim that the GAA season was going to be a bit like Game of Thrones. Here is his reaction to Cork's dramatic win against Clare yesterday.
Yeah, it's going to be massive because, like, if there's stuff in this Tipperary team, which there is because I would have played against them a good few times, they will come out and they'll be at their most dangerous next week, because after a beating like that, everyone will be doubting them, everyone will be questioning them. Like, I think there's a media ban we hear from Tipperary as well, so they're going to probably receive even more criticism. So you can imagine now they'll be building something inside in that dressing room that it's us against the world. And if there's going to be success for this Tipperary team later on in the season, there's going to have to be no question next week about their attitude, their will to die for each other, and that's against Cork. So if they were to beat Cork next week, we'll ensure that the Munster Championship is wide open. And I predicted that it was going to be like the Game of Thrones, where every week someone was going to die that you weren't expecting, and I think it's shaping up that way.
And sometimes they can come back to life as well, and maybe Clare will get the Jon Snow rejuvenation next weekend. They're at home to Waterford at what will be a packed out Cusack Park. What did you see from Clare today? Did you see enough to suggest that they can make an impact this season?
I did. I thought it was their first half when they owned the ball. Like, all the best players, McInerney, like, he was like Brian Lohan back in the day, coming out with ball after ball after ball, high ball, low ball. In the forward, Shane O'Donnell was winning loads of ball. Conor McGrath was winning ball, but there was no end game. So if there was no scoreboard here in the first half, I would say Clare are dominating this game. There was no end game. If they can sort out their end game, Clare they can beat anyone, and that will be it'll be a tactical battle, I'd say, down in Ennis. Very tight field. This is where we're coming back. Like, here's another home victory. Go through the matches actually just as we're speaking. Like, Kilkenny went up but could have been pipped by Dublin, won their home game today. Limerick won their home game. Now Cork are after winning their home game. So
Wexford won their home game.
So home advantage, as we said. Is this home thing going to play a major part? It seems to be so far. Down in Ennis then you'd be saying, well, Clare should know every blade of that grass because they're there so often. So advantage Clare, you might think.
All right, Jamesy O'Connor is with us. Jamesy, good morning to you. Let's start with the Clare Cork game.
Sure,
What Tommy Walsh a little bit confident, or kind of hopeful at least, that Clare showed enough signs yesterday to have a sense going into the Waterford game next week that they'll be able to recover from what happened yesterday. What's your take on what happened yesterday, and how much hope do you give them against Waterford next week?
Listen, as Tommy said, Jeremy, we had some really good opportunities to open up Cork in the first half, and we just didn't take them. And Conor McGrath had an amount of ball. I mean, he could have had 4 or 5, 6 points from play in the first half, but I think we were going for goals at times when we didn't need to, and had some of those balls been tapped over the bar, I think it would have kept the scoreboard ticking over. So it was disappointing. At half time I felt we probably needed to take those chances, but even the second half, I mean, Cathal Malone went in at one stage right along the end line, gave a hand pass. I think it was over O'Donnell's head. I mean, if the pass had gone to hand, it was in the back of the net, and you just felt that we were going to pay the price for not taking those chances. That said, listen, there were a lot of positives, but I didn't think our big players. I mean, Tony Kelly, I think it's 6 possessions in the game. Again, when he gets on the ball, sure, good things happen. But up to his goal in the second half, I think that was his first involvement in the actual play, and he needs to be centrally involved as he was against Limerick, for example, in the league quarter final. Listen, we have a chance. Our backs are to the wall now next weekend, and Watford are coming in fresh. And I thought the Clare players were out on their feet at the end of the game. They expended every ounce of energy that was there in their bodies, and it's going to be a big challenge there to pick themselves up, from that defeat. But they don't have a choice now, and hopefully with the home crowd then is behind them, they'll get a performance next weekend. But now I think we are very much fighting for our championship lives.
Jamesy, what was the game plan from a Clare perspective against Cork? How were they trying to win that game?
I think, Jared, listen, I was critical of them last year and frustrated watching them because we didn't get enough ball into O'Donnell and McGrath, our inside line. And, I came home in the car with Christy, and I think he said that they had something like 26 possessions between them, which was phenomenal. So we did get ball in there. And then I think we were just looking to try to isolate them, have runners coming from deep, laying the ball off. And certainly early on, O'Donnell played a lovely 1-2 with David Reedy. Mark Coleman carried a fantastic interception when it really looked like it was a serious goal chance there. Tony Kelly again came on to a pass in the first half, maybe laid it off a little bit too early when he could have taken it on and probably could have shot himself. So the final pass just didn't stick, but very much getting the ball into the two guys in the inside line and with runners coming off the shoulder. And on another day, if some of those passes had stuck or the pass had gone to hand, we could certainly have had the two or three goal opportunities that we probably needed to take to win the match.
So how do you get Tony Kelly on the ball a little bit more next weekend, Jamesy?
That's the $60 million question, Owen. Against Limerick in the league quarter-final, I keep going back to that game, Kelly was, just seemed to be picking up breaking ball in his half-back line. It wasn't that he was getting on to the end of a pass and putting the ball over the bar. I think that's been the problem maybe with Tony in the last couple of years, that, you get 15-20 minutes where he's not involved in the play. Suddenly, in the space of a minute, he takes two passes and has 2 points, and he comes off the field maybe with 3 or 4 points from play. But, it's from, as I said, 5 or 6 possessions, when in that game against Limerick, he was probably close to 20 possessions. He was picking up, as I said, ball from his half-backs, winning frees just out on the middle of the field, just finding a way to get involved in the play. And I really don't know if there's any single answer to that question, but he just needs to get on the ball and even those little things, can give you confidence. You feel you're more involved in the play, because the longer the game goes on without getting your hands on it, the harder it becomes, the more frustrated you become, the harder you try. And maybe that's the problem with Tony sometimes, that he's trying too hard. There were a couple of other occasions when he made the runs and players didn't see him, didn't pick him out, the pass didn't come, and that's not on him. But there's no question about it. Tip find a way to get the ball in the hands of Quinlan. Kilkenny invariably find a way to get the ball in the hands of TJ Reid. Galway with Canning. Other players have got to be aware that, look, this is the finisher, this is the guy that's more than likely going to convert the opportunities, and maybe some of our lesser players in attack, the grafters, the Carl Malones, the Peter Duggans, just need to be more aware of their own limitations and say, right, okay, I'm not a shooter, but Kelly is, and I've got to get my head up and try to find him. But it's hugely important for Clare now that he bounces back and it's a big game next weekend.
I want to move on to your thoughts on Cork. Just before we do that, we'll play you this video. It's Tommy Walsh speaking again with Nathan in the immediate aftermath. Here are his post-match thoughts on Cork yesterday.
Cork, could they produce it again? Could their leaders? Was it a one-season wonder, or was this a new change for this Cork team, and maybe a reason why they could go on and win an All-Ireland final? And the second half proved to me today, Harnedy can still do it. Lehane wasn't in the game in the first half, kept plugging and plugging, chased in that, I suppose, lost ball, if you like. Most corner forwards like Horgan wouldn't have went for it, but Horgan did, and he stopped it, and Lehane put the ball in the back of the net. So for me, what I learned from today is the Cork leaders are truly here, and they're a reason that Cork can go on and win the All-Ireland.
Yeah, José, I think that the biggest unknown about Cork heading into the game yesterday was whether or not they were going to continue the progress or the signs of progress under Kieran Kingston last year. You never know exactly what's going to happen when a new manager comes in, but it looked to me like Myler had taken all the best parts of last year and added a little bit of extra steel, it seemed, in the defence without taking away any of the attacking talent, and in fact helping that attacking talent find its full expression. So I'd say the rest of the country was looking at that Cork performance yesterday and going, uh-oh.
Yeah, it was impressive, Ger. And when Robbie O'Flynn went down injured, the Cork players got themselves together, and it was very much player led, and that's what you're looking for. And Clare levelled, and it was funny with that stoppage. There were, I think, 11 minutes of added time, and you were looking at the game clock and saying, right, well, okay, this is going to go to 81 minutes. But I think there were about 10 minutes left when Clare got the equaliser, and Clare, I think it was Shane Morey went through the back of someone and gave a needless free away, and Cork again got their noses in front, but they really kicked on from there. And as Tommy said, Harnedy, Lehane, Horgan, they're big players, really stepped up. And Horgan had done nothing in the first half, but still, that little flick for Lehan's goal, and he came off the field with 4 points in play, nailed all the frees, and that's just the mark of experience. Even Harnedy, when again he was struggling at times maybe to get into the game, he came good in the end and finished strong, and that's a big positive. And Alan Canagan didn't start yesterday. Shane Kingston only came off the bench. They have a bit more cover at the back. I think Sean O'Donoghue had a really good league. He impressed me. Tim O'Mahony, who played centre back for most of the league, came on. So I think they've depth there, and like their puck out strategy, Jared, they created a lot of space. They ran tirelessly off the ball, and they finished the game probably stronger than Clare. So their fitness levels are very, very high, and they have a glorious opportunity to put Tip to the sword next weekend, Jared, because if Tip are in trouble now, if Cork beat next weekend, they've got Waterford coming down the tracks a week later. We don't know what's going to happen in Ennis next weekend. So yeah, as Tommy said, Game of Thrones, it's really intriguing, ahead of next Sunday and beyond.
It's interesting that you mentioned that situation with O'Flynn yesterday and how it was a player-led movement to kind of keep their mentality in check during that period. And one of those players is clearly Anthony Nash, and he's such an important part for them in that sense of things as well. But you mentioned the puck-out strategy yesterday, and it seemed when Clare made alterations to try and stop Anthony Nash just finding his corner forwards in the 14, they were almost powerless to stop that he's that accurate. Like, can you see anything that Tipperary can do next weekend to have any success at all against Nash's puck-outs?
Yeah, well, again, like what Waterford doing the All-Ireland semi-final last year on, I mean, obviously they had worked on it. They'd looked to shut down, get the big men, the big bodies across the middle of the field, and he overhit a couple, and that will happen. But I think the movement again of his forwards, the midfielders, are looking to create these pockets of space. If it's not on long, he trusts the cornerbacks to become available, the fullback Cahalane to become available, and then they go from there. So it's a bit like an American football cornerback trying to cover a wide receiver that, you can cover him for a particular length of time, but the longer the play goes on and their movement is continual, even if he goes short, they're making another break in another direction. And as I said, that willingness of the Cork half forwards, midfielders, even half backs to make themselves available is hard to counteract and defend. But the bigger teams, Clare don't have the wall of 6-footers that maybe Kilkenny can put across the middle, that Galway can put across the middle, that Waterford put across the middle, in last year's semi-final. But Tip will certainly have to find a way to counteract it, because, as I said, it's a lot of Cork's good play stems from getting his forwards in possession, and they go from there.
Let's talk a little bit about Tipperary, and we heard from Tommy earlier on that it's a dressing room which is not speaking to the media, but that within that dressing room they are obviously going to be having long, and you would presume fairly heated conversations either yesterday or whenever their first meeting is ahead of the game next weekend. We have seen this is a team that likes a bit of crisis in the background, that has come through various seasons in the past where allegations about lads out drinking, that the unit comes out, the unit clamps together, and suddenly they go on a bit of a run. It is kind of all set up for them to go on a bit of a run now.
Well, I don't think that might have been the plan, Ger. But yeah, look at their backs are to the wall now. They're in a corner. But I mean, I fancy them. I still think with the forwards they have. I thought with their best 15 on the field, I still thought that they'd go to the Gaelic grounds and get a result yesterday. That was until Friday night. And then the team is announced, and you look at the players who aren't on it, and you have Seamus Cahalane didn't play, Bonner Maher didn't play, Brendan Maher apparently pulled a hamstring the previous week. Carl Barrett, Mickey Cahill, long-term injuries. James Barry was dropped. Michael Breen didn't play. And you're looking at 5 starters, and you're saying this is Limerick's to lose now, because with the team Limerick have picked, big half forward line, big half back line. They found a couple of players in their inside forward line. I'm wondering just can Tip genuinely good enough to beat them now, because in the league final the depth they thought they had acquired probably wasn't there, and it didn't surprise me that Limerick pulled it out last weekend. But Tip now, they're in a corner, Ger, and sometimes when things are going really well, that's when you get caught. And yeah, they've got to come out fighting now. But look at this massive experience in that dressing room, and their year is hanging by a thread now, because if they lose next weekend, they've Waterford and Clare. They're playing Waterford, who it's Waterford's second match. It's in the Gaelic ground. It's not as if it's in Thurles. And then Clare go in coming off the bye, into the last game when Tip will be playing their fourth game in 21 days or whatever. So Sunday is D-Day for Tipperary now, and it appears, Joe, that he's got to get some of those experienced players like Quinlan back on the field.
Part of me feels like Tipperary are a bit like Mayo in that they actually thrive on the drama of the situation. Yeah,
well, they may have to now. But again, listen, like Pádraig Maher, Brendan Maher, there's massive experience in that dressing room, and they know that at the end of the day, too, this could happen. I mean, Limerick are a good side, and Limerick are coming and a coming force. So it's not like they're not prepared for this, or they haven't this position before. Like Tip, going back through the years, even when even last year, go back 12 months, they lost to Cork and had to revert to plan B and found a way to come back. So the talent is there in the dressing room. I mean, they have what other teams maybe don't, and that's a real cutting edge up front, the ability to get goals. But there are issues, elsewhere in the team, and Michael Ryan has 6 days, to sort them out, and that process, I'm sure, started at 4:00 yesterday evening.
Finding that cutting edge, it's interesting you mentioned that, because that's obviously a much harder thing to do than bring personnel back into the team. And like, you look at the finishing forwards yesterday, it was an unbelievably talented bunch of players that they had on the pitch. Like, to get them and to find that cutting edge in the space of 7 days is an incredibly hard thing to do. And like, I'm with you when you say that it is borderline crisis point for them, particularly if they lose next weekend.
Oh, it is, yeah. But I mean, as I said, like they're one of the unlucky teams. I mean, there are certain teams that having to play 4 weeks in a row was always going to be the biggest challenge. I mean, Clare, have 2 weeks. They've got the bye, then they play 2 weeks. Which is probably the ideal scenario. And I think when the authorities look at this again, maybe squeezing another week in there somewhere in the middle, is the way forward, and that's something they'll do next year. But it comes down to this: like, this Tipperary set of players have really underachieved. When you look at the talent they have, when you go back to 2010. They've won a second All-Ireland, and they will certainly, this is now weekend. Their season, as I said, hinges on this. Now, it's still conceivable they beat Waterford and Clare in the last two matches, and they're in a quarter-final, and they can build that way. And the longer the time they have, the longer Tip stay in this championship, I'm sure the better they'll be, because Quinlan, Bonner, Brendan Maher, the guys that have missed game time are going to be getting back and getting the mileage into their legs, getting the match fitness that they arguably lack.
Just one final point about this, the evolution of Cian Lynch into a midfielder as somebody who can hold his own, play make, pick ball up off the defence and be a playmaker, but also then move forward and score. There's a potential for him to be one of the hurlers of his generation. We lost the connection there to Jamesy.
Like, that's how good Cian Lynch is. I mean, he just kind of stops all conversation about him.
Drop.
That's maybe there's a media ban going on in Limerick as well. As soon as you bring up Limerick, it's just kind of radio silence, automatically kind of invading the country. It's worth pointing out as well, while we try and re-establish that Tip scored 5 points from play yesterday. He scored, obviously 214 is not exactly kind of an emphatic total from just to reiterate the forwards that Tip finished with yesterday. So the players that they had on the pitch at the end of the game: Bonner Maher, Dan McCormick, Noel McGrath, Seamus Callan, John O'Dwyer, Jason Ford, John McGrath. Like, granted, that's what they finished with. It's not what they started, but it's not what they played the majority of the game with. And they notched 5 points from play. That is a serious amount of improvement that is needed in the space of 1 week for Tipperary to save their season. And that's what it is. And that's why this Munster Championship, despite the fact that it's not knockout, as they say, has the potential to just have a much more heightened sense of jeopardy about it.
I wonder if the Tip fans think that Pádraig Maher needs to go back to right half back, where he's like one of the best three hurlers in the country, whereas at centre back he's really good, but you have one of the best players in the country who can create and destroy in equal measure, whereas at centre back he just seems a bit more constrained. Now, obviously, you want to get your best players in your key positions, and you take the trade-off, and that's the value of having him play centre back. But I don't know, it just felt like stick him right half back, let him do stuff. Let him be more in the game as opposed to minding everybody else and obsessed about space. And
it's a good theory. We've seen Ronan Maher play at centre back before, and he's been pretty damn good at it. So I don't see any reason why they can't try that out and let Pádraig Maher be that free-flowing energy from the back. I mean, it's something that we've seen yesterday, especially from Wexford, the way they kind of surge out of defence with kind of shorter passing runners. You've already made a comparison with Mayo when it comes to the Tipperary mentality, but when it comes to the way Mayo play, I mean, Wexford aren't too far away when it comes to those runners and support from their half-back line. I mean, somebody like Paddy Maher could be the epitome of that, were Tip to utilise him like that. It's not a bad shout. Put him into kind of a less onerous position to allow him to have a bit more creative freedom.
Yeah, okay, let's move on. Davy Fitz, obviously pretty happy after a very narrow win for Wexford against Dublin. They led the whole way through the game and it looked like it was going to be one-sided, and then Dublin kind of roared back with about 15 minutes left to go, stuck their noses in front with about a minute left, led into injury time, and then conceded the last 3 points of the game. So Wexford squeaked it out in the end. Here's Davy Fitz.
Davy, was that as tough a game as you thought it would be going into it?
Yeah, we always knew it to be tough. Like, the Dubs have improved out of measure, but I just think we made it hard on ourselves. I honestly believe that we should have killed that game off once or twice and we let them back into it. The 2 goals were 2 errors we made. If you look at them back, the first one we made was sharp ball that Damo gave to Paddy, shouldn't have given it. The second one we missed it twice. Liam missed rising at total control, Damo missed it the second time. So you give away 2 momentum swings like that, it's very hard to turn it back. Like, normally the team that gets that momentum wins it, but in fairness to the lads, they weren't giving up, and there's no doubt in my mind Wexford are the better team today.
Do you think that because you haven't been in action for so long, in competitive action anyway, that maybe you just haven't found your touch just yet for the championship?
I'm delighted how we played. Thought we played pretty decent stuff. Like, we created about 38 chances. I think we had 22 scores, 13 wides, another 2 goal chances. Like, so that's right up there with anyone what they'll shoot. And it's just when you're up, you've got to kill the game off. We didn't. We were up twice. We should have. But you know what? That'll stand us good. As I told you, we're only a year and a half down here into this project, and the lads, you can see it. A lot of teams wouldn't have come back the way they came back with 2 minutes to go, and they finished very strong.
Yeah, because in the past, Dave, you would have had a couple of weeks maybe in between games to get ready. Do you enjoy the round robin format?
I loved the one. I just think one more week in between for us to play week. We're one of 2 teams that have to play 4 weeks in a row. That's very hard, guys. 4 weeks in a row, trust me, is hard. But I can't afford to think of 3 and 4 until I get over number 2. But I know it's going to be tough, and it's a different way we have to look at, maybe train the lads completely. We have to look at things differently, you know.
Yeah, I look, he's not giving out.
No.
You know, you read it and you think, oh, Davy's not, but he's like, fair enough. At the point that Jamesy made, add an extra week in there along the way and make sure that everybody has a week off in the middle of it somewhere along the way, probably doable. And
the GAA should take a holistic approach and put all the provincial football semi-finals on that week when the hurling is off. That way you get to see these provincial semi-finals that we're all going to miss out on live television. Everybody is of the opinion that this is the positives outweigh the negatives. Look at this. This is incredible. I mean, this is, I presume, half-time.
Audio only. Go on, Feet. Explain what's happening.
So we've just seen, according to what I seen on Twitter yesterday, a Wexford official just invited all the children onto the pitch to play at half-time, and what we're seeing on screen right now is just an absolute slew of kids going on, playing around with their hurls and slitters, and it's just it's a great scene to see, because there has been kind of a sense of that being phased out a little bit over the past couple of years. Not so much at Wexford Park by the sounds of things, because that was the case apparently all last summer as well. I haven't been to see Wexford in the Davy era, but there seems to be that freshness, that energy, even when the team aren't on the pitch.
You get the sense that what's happening here is that they're learning the lessons and they're making sure that these kids feel involved and that this is the thing that they want to do and that they have access to. You know, I didn't see in the post-match, but I presume the scenes were fairly similar at full-time as well. There were a couple of matches around the country where the cameras kind of were, whoever analysts were there, and you could see in the background that there were hundreds and hundreds of people on the pitch, and I think it's really nice. It's like an important thing. It's one of the things, again, that separates. If that happens in most sports around the world, it's like, oh, massive inquiry, how did this happen, security needs to be tightened. Here it's like, yeah, come on out, poke around a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. That was a huge win for Wexford as well yesterday, in fairness. I know Davy's really kind of promoting this idea that they were far better than Dublin and it should never have been that tight a game. Pat Gilroy is once again promoting this idea that it's all about results for Dublin. It's not about progress. It's all about the results. I think we're pretty clear now that Pat Gilroy wants to win with this team.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Like, it's going to not be a one-year project. Dublin aren't going to go from being shocking last year to suddenly being proper contenders in a viable Leinster Championship the way the Leinster Championship has become. So, I'd say if they don't manage to somehow rescue this situation, they'll be disappointed with how things ultimately ended up, but I think the rest of the country can see that there is legitimate progress happening in Dublin hurling.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there is progress. I mean, they've scored 5 goals in their first 2 games in the championship, which is exactly what you would have targeted from a defensive point of view. Defensively, though, they're just fouling too much. I mean, they've given up a dozen frees in the scoring zone in the last 2 games each. So that's an obvious problem at the back. Like, there's nothing wrong with Gilroy potentially coming out at the end of it and saying, listen, deep down, it was all about progress. But of course, he's got to keep pushing this message. They've still got to play Galway. They've still got a huge game there to say it's all about the results, because like it's a poor PR message to put out in the middle of it. But I think he'll be quietly satisfied, if not immediately, but maybe deeper into the winter after what's already happened, assuming they don't get hammered by Galway.
We're going to move on to the football in just a second, but before we do, we're going to finish on Offaly and Kilkenny. Here's Brian Carroll talking about the Offaly-Kilkenny game in the aftermath of that.
But these players probably will respond better to the challenge. That's the one thing. Maybe when inexperience happens, it's trying to find that level of consistency. Whereas these younger players, they rose certainly to the challenge in the latter parts of the league, and they'll be licking their lips, looking forward next week to Galway and Salt Hill. And that really is going to be a massive battle and something really to look forward to.
And finally, from you, the lessons learned for Offaly today.
Yeah, from Offaly's perspective, I think it's always been about building for next week for this Wexford game in O'Connor Park. There's been nothing but a puck of a ball between us for many a year, and I'm really looking forward to it. I know we're after taking 2 beatings, but let's be honest and let's be real about this. I didn't expect anything but victories for Galway and Kilkenny against Offaly in those first 2 games. What I will say is we have been reasonably okay in those couple of games. We probably don't believe in ourselves enough, but next week against Wexford in O'Connor Park, I think we should really go for it, attack them with everything we have and really go for it. We showed that when we go toe to toe with anyone, we can do it, and go with a little bit of belief next week, and I think Offaly can get a victory there.
Well, that'll be amazing.
Yeah, it would be. That would be a real turn up for the books. Like, this Dublin Offaly game is going to be an absolute corker when it comes to, maybe not in terms of being the hurling game of the summer, but in terms of the event. It could be one of the events of the summer, because that is proper next in the line sort of stuff. Automatic relegation if you lose that game, essentially, is what it's going to be, because realistically, I can't see Offaly winning that game next weekend. I can't see Dublin winning next weekend.
No, and yet maybe automatic relegation wasn't the best idea in retrospect. Offaly seem to be getting their house in order, and it's like, just as they do, like, nah, too late. Should have done this years ago, lads.
Obviously the opposite argument to that is that there are teams in the Joe McDonagh Cup who are also getting their house in order, and they should have the opportunity to prove that on the biggest stage. Whether or not their house is in similar state to Offaly, probably not. Offaly will still probably get promoted to the Joe McDonagh problem next year.
Well, you would expect so, but then does everybody... Anyway, a debate for another time, because ultimately there's lots of other good stuff to talk about.
There's lots of positive stuff.
Yeah.
Lots of good stuff. I think we're moving on to maybe even a bit of football, which did occur at the weekend.
Yeah, well, let's talk about McManus and Beggan first, because what Conor McManus did and what Rory Beggan did was shoot the lights out. Also, a shout out to the Monaghan jerseys and their full kit, which is sensational.
Let's just have a moment to appreciate the beauty of red versus blue, because we got it in Munster versus Leinster on Saturday, and we got it in Tyrone versus Monaghan yesterday. An all red versus an all blue kit. You can't beat it on an aesthetic point of view. No matter what we talk about in terms of the actual competition, that is the most important thing we will talk about today, is the fact that red versus blue is...
Were the shorts always the same? Is this new? It feels new.
Yeah, it is. Like the classic would always be to go with the white shorts.
Yeah.
It's a safe option. But once you go all blue and all red, just like Munster and Leinster did basically on Saturday, it looks a hell of a lot better. It's like the Thursday night football in the NFL when they have the colour rush kits. So just a moment of appreciation for that, and fitting for kind of a moment when you kind of look at Monaghan and you're like, right, you can be a clutch team. Rory Beggan, Conor McManus in particular. It's hard to know exactly how Conor McManus would fare against a Dublin if they were to play next week. You would suspect a lot better than Monaghan had fared in previous years. And
so, yeah.
Well,
here's the thing: they might get them now in Clonus, right?
True.
Like,
if they win Ulster, they will have to play Dublin. Is the long and short of it.
We know where that game has been scheduled for.
It will probably be Croke Park. Actually, it is definitely going to be Croke Park. It is going to be the first round of the Super 8s, is the Ulster winner against the Leinster winner in Croke Park.
So do we want them to get beaten in the semi-final and come through the back door, and also then...
or lose the final, and that way they'll be in a group with Kerry and Galway, presumably, and that way that'll be in a provincial ground. Anyway, Monaghan yesterday, like Dick Clerkin is writing in the Indo today that we have to start taking Monaghan seriously as All-Ireland contenders. All the parts might be there, but I'm not buying into that hype just yet. I want to buy into that hype as much as I have. as much as I can. But I bought into this Monaghan hype twice before. I bought into it in 2014. I bought into it last year. They got hammered by Dublin both years. Until I see them contend with Dublin in Croke Park, Monaghan are not All-Ireland contenders. And I know that it's very, like, that basically takes all predictions out of it. Say the wait and see tactic. And I'm sorry to do that, but Monaghan have stung me too much in the past.
Yeah.
There's enough there to suggest that they will win Ulster, and they will be my favourites for Ulster.
You're going to stick your hand in the wound there and take it out and go, oh, it's covered in blood. This is real.
Yeah, Cian Lynch style. Well, that was kind of different though, wasn't it?
You're saying Cian Lynch is Jesus in that analogy, or is he?
Well, you know, he's gone from Billy Elliot to Rambo to Jesus over the course of this morning. So it's been I'm not sure which was the peak of that.
So the Rory Gallagher train rolled in under cover of darkness last winter into Enniskillen and Fermanagh, and he brought Ricey with him, and we all said it's going to be a pretty interesting touchline wherever Fermanagh go this year, and straight off the bat, 5-point victory against Armagh, who have yet to win a game in the Ulster Championship under Kieran McGeeney. Yeah,
they've been getting slaughtered left, right and centre by pundits over the past 24 hours. Pat Spillane on the Sunday game last night.
I'd say Spillane was like, yes, McGeeney, I've got you now.
He did a little bit of a feature on how bad Armagh were, and he's like, I'm not going to name names here, but lads can't do basic skills. And on national TV shows a video of one of the lads not being able to pick up the ball. You don't need to name names, Pat, when you're on primetime television and people can actually see the number of the player and the player you're actually talking about. I can't remember which one. I think it was number 11 for Armagh, if I remember correctly. But yeah, they are getting torn to shreds. They're just far too defensive to be able to compete at the highest level. They're not going to take a step forward from last year unless yesterday, or Saturday night rather, was a complete anomaly, which I fear it's not.
Declan Bogue had a great line in his piece about how Armagh had gone off for a warm weather training camp to some posh place, and Fermanagh had kept it local in the Loughearn Resort. I'm like, the Loughearn Resort is pretty nice. It's 5 stars, but you know, it's
got the G8 somewhat once a year.
It's like, yeah, it's you know, when you win, you win. Okay, so that was the Limerick footballers. Oh no, that was another team in green. That was the final bits of celebrations from Brewster Park, where obviously Fermanagh had beaten Armagh. The other story about a team in green this weekend was the ridiculous situation where the Limerick manager comes out and talks about the county board not providing food after training on the Tuesday night, and then this massive weird scenario where emails weren't checked and a team was named and the wrong team ends up going to Croke Park. So a couple of players who were supposed to be on the matchday squad couldn't ultimately be in the matchday squad. Billy Lee pretty pissed off after the mullering they took against Clare.
But I must tell you, like, some of the stuff that I've had to put up with this week from our county board has been shocking. Absolute shocking. There was a lad on our bench today that we couldn't use because the wrong list went to Croke Park. That's at 4:45 this evening. I had to have a separate conference call with my management team to sort out this. And even as late as 10 minutes to go before they threw up the game, I was there was a game of Russian roulette being played because I wasn't prepared to come out in the field with the team. It was gone to that extreme. They changed it some bit, but at half time they came again and said if we won this game we'd have to fight for the game. Like, I work in a job, the lads work in a job. We've got a full-time administrators and they can't do their job right. During the week we came to train here with fellas down from Dublin, Cork, Galway, and there was no food provided for the players. Someone fucked up. And on Wednesday morning, no one told me there was a team to be in for the programme on Wednesday. And I had to convene a conference call at work on a busy day to get it, and then as a consequence of this, there was a fuck up. It's just unbelievable that that's what it's come to and what you have to deal with. You have people paid to do a job and they can't do it. That's what we're dealing with in Limerick.
Yeah. Choice language there from a very upset Limerick manager. The Limerick County Board did respond with a statement the following day, which was basically like, nothing to see here, lads. The Management Committee of Limerick GAA would like to clarify the following in relation to comments made by the senior football team manager yesterday evening. Never a good sign when the County Board is issuing statements after a post-match press conference from your manager. But anyway, let's go. The County Board tenders for and approves caterers at the beginning of each year. Each individual team management and their support team is then responsible for arranging the team meals after training is required. Not our fault. That's the subtext from that one. Number 2, the team list for this weekend's fixtures week ending May the 20th were received by the County Secretary on Wednesday evening and were subsequently forwarded in good faith to Croke Park in accordance to compliance with regulation. A subsequent email was received by the County Secretary late Wednesday night, which the County Secretary did not have access to until after the 9 a.m. deadline on Thursday morning. Well, now, come on. Just open up your Gmail on your phone. Come on. Get your Exchange set up. Somebody somewhere knows how to run an email on a phone, and maybe there could have been a WhatsApp or a text saying, by the way, we've got to change there. Can you stick that one back up? Sorry, number 3. Any request made by the senior football team management during 2018 was agreed and acceded to by Limerick County Board. So Limerick County Board's first and third, it's like nothing to do with us, your fault, off you go. Second one, I don't think that one rings true. Limerick County Board would like to acknowledge the contribution of senior football players and management of 2018. Limerick GAA will make no further statement on this matter. Screw you, buddy. Not my fault.
Anyway, on to the hurling is what that statement says to me.
Yeah, did you see we won the hurling, lads?
Yeah, it's a nice cover for what's actually happened there on Saturday night. Fair play to Billy Lee is what I say.
Yeah.
I mean, like sometimes you got to rail against your own county board in public because a lot of these things just happen behind a closed curtain and nobody ever knows what the hell is going on. So fair play to him for doing that, and to be a second-class citizen as a footballer in Limerick, I'm sure is something that kind of rankles with all of them.
Ulster, at the very death of the season, managed to secure a place in the Champions Cup in a playoff in Ravenhill yesterday. Ultimately comfortable enough for them in the end, although they didn't start so well. And Jono Gibbs gave his final post-match interview as the coach of Ulster. Pretty awkward.
I just want to share some time with the people I've worked alongside tonight and celebrate what those boys put out there. And man, that's awesome. Seriously, we've been criticised throughout the year for performance and all that other garbage, but I feel good about what they've displayed today because that came from the group, that came from within them, and they should be really proud of what they showed today.
Can you understand why people have criticised you while you were in France on a Thursday ahead of this game on the Sunday?
Not really, I think if you look at it, the question is probably, did preparation get compromised? No, it didn't. It was a player's day off, and the fact was it was a bizarre game in that we had 3 weeks to prepare for this game anyway, so there wasn't a lot of detail that needed to be covered off. Players down day. I've got a life outside of Ulster Rugby as well, and I think the question being, was performance compromised? No, it wasn't.
Is there a sour taste in this relationship you leave Ulster with, or is it good?
Why would you ask that, mate? Mate, I've just said, I've just had a great experience working with people. It's been a difficult year. There's no sour taste. So I know you got to ask that, but I don't know why you want to carry on with that. Okay, good man. Appreciate that.
That's the end of the Jono Gibbs era in Ulster, and it ends not on a sour taste, according to Jono Gibbs. Alan, all a bit. Good morning to you. How you doing?
Morning, Gerard. Morning, Owen.
I think we also have Matt Williams with us. Matt, good morning to you too. How you doing? Yeah. I'm going to go to Alan first on this one and come back to you in a second.
And I want to go to Matt then, because there's a little bit of a lover's tiff between Roger and himself on Twitter.
All right,
check that one out with him.
Jono Gibbs, he's going to get asked because he said he was going home to New Zealand, and now it turns out slightly better job in La Rochelle has come up, and he's in the mix for that. So of course you're going to get asked, right? It's fair game.
Yeah, for sure. And I can't believe he's surprised that Gavin Andrews, who did really well in that interview to keep his composure and ask the questions that the fans want answers to. There's been so much turmoil up in Ulster. He was given a 2-year contract there last year, and he's leaving for family reasons initially, which is understandable, because Bryn Cunningham comes out one day and he says, look, Jono Gibbs is not going anywhere. The next day he comes out and he said, we had an emotional conversation. He's going back to New Zealand for family reasons. We don't want to lose him, but we understand. Then 3 days later, he signed as head coach for Waikato, which again is understandable, because if you're going back home and your dad is unwell, well, we don't expect someone not to work.
Yeah.
He's getting a job closer to home. He's able to see his dad, whatever.
Totally fine.
Understandable.
Yeah.
Little bit of anger over that, him breaking the contract initially, but then understandable. But, in preparation for this game, La Rochelle sacked their coach 2 weeks ago, and Jono Gibbs is seen in La Rochelle on Friday. Now, if he's not gone there to be interviewed for the job, and if he's going visiting mates, because he's worked in France before with Clermont, if he's visiting mates or on a little bit of a break or whatever, just say that. Don't say, well, We're packing up at the moment and that's all we're focusing on. He didn't deny the speculation. And I thought the last question, a little bit of a sour taste, is a very fair question. He says, I know you why you have to ask that question, but then he says, why did you ask it? Because he's doing his job. He wants to know, well, there is a little bit of a sour taste. Address the situation, clear it up. Even if he comes out and says, look, this was my plan, back to New Zealand, family reasons, my dad has got better news, you know, this thing has presented itself, it's after creating a bit of confusion, and I went and met them. And, you know, the Ulster thing is over. Fair enough, people wouldn't be angry, but transparency, we hear that word a lot, and honesty and being straight up. And look, from what I gather, Jono Gibbs is a superb forwards coach. Right. I'm not sure if he's a head coach.
Yeah, okay, that might be it. Matt, what did you make of the whole... I mean, it kind of speaks to the chaos of Ulster's season, really.
Yeah, fitting end, isn't it? I think Jono can't wait to get out. It's an absolute bun fight up there. You know, there's contractual issues, coaches going, you've got ex-players chipping into the mix, criticism of the CEO, criticism of the committee that the IRFU have, each province in the IRFU have running the area. A lot of non-Ulster players contracted, some old senior players retiring, some heart and soul of the joint. It's a very, very difficult environment up there. I can understand why Jono Gibbs said he was proud of the guys. To have a 3-week break at the end of a really tough season and then have Europe riding on one game must have been a very, very long 3 weeks. So to win so well and to qualify, I can understand why he said he's happy, he's packing up, he can go, but I don't think he can wait to get out of there.
Yeah. I mean, it was a fair enough question in the end. Like, Ulster obviously a little bit confused about the fact that he was leaving, but they have found their new coach, so everybody has really moved on, and maybe now's the time that everybody can just stop talking about Ulster Rugby for a couple of months, forget about it for a while, and hope that the reset button gets pressed in a meaningful way. And maybe they might even have a coach for the start of next season.
Yeah, well, maybe. Look, it's just the whole thing is just so you talk to the players. That's a long time since I've been out of there, 9-10 years now. But in the boys that I'm still in contact with, they're just very sad for the state it's in. We've got to remember they made the final of the Heineken Cup, and they were never going to win that final. Leinster were always going to win it because they hadn't been up the top end of Europe for a long time. But after that final, they should have kicked on. And the exact opposite has happened. It's a really salient point when we're talking about clubs in France here. Bayrit's the great European powerhouse that Quinny played against and Munster won their famous final against. They look like they're going to be relegated to third division, to Federale 1 over here under financial difficulties. Now, it doesn't take long for a great club to become an ordinary club, to become an irrelevant club, if you're not managed well. And we're not talking about players, and you're even not talking about coaches. This is at the top end. Leinster have done really, really well because the top end of Leinster Rugby, the committee and the CEOs have done really well. I don't know a lot about GAA, but I would suggest that at Dublin, why have Dublin become successful over the last few years is a lot about the top end management that they've got to be getting right. And when the top end management gets it wrong, it has this flow-on effect. Now you're going to see one of the great powerhouses of European rugby, Bayrit's, in Federale. Now, Ulster have done the same. They've come from a really strong position. They were set up. They had really good young players, and they've stuffed it up.
Yeah, and I think that's why them qualifying for the Champions Cup was so unbelievably important, in that it will actually allow them to go out and make a compelling case to next season's potential players who are going to join and say, no, it's okay, we've got our house in order, we have a new coach coming, he's really good, and we are playing in the European Cup. Let's move on to Leinster Munster, because we were just chatting off air a little bit earlier on. It feels to me like there's a bigger gap between Leinster and Munster than 1 point at the end of that match, and sometimes you'd be concerned when the post-match analysis is like, oh, we're really close, we're right there at the minute, because it doesn't feel to me like Munster are right there when they're losing Zebo, when you take into account that Leinster didn't start with Sexton, didn't start with Robbie Henshaw, didn't start with their first choice front row. Just it felt like this was not Leinster's second team, but like the week after European Cup win, that's the time you want to get them, and Munster couldn't capitalise.
Well, you get a sense that obviously being a Munster man, I was relieved that, you know, Munster brought passion, pride, stuff you associate with the jersey. The big problem, and Matty's spoken about it himself, the execution is the issue. They had opportunities there. There's an awful lot of forward passes, big, wide, loopy passes. There's a timing issue in their attack. And these are the repeat problems. Now, in his defence, Johan van Graan has only been in a couple of months. He hasn't had a huge chance to implement or change things. It's very difficult to do any of that stuff during the season, but the general skill set of some of the players and the execution at that level, you see what you get when you put those forward passes, those wide loopy passes, and there was space, there was opportunities at times, and then you look and Munster had more of the possession in the first half and the second half, and they had a good bit of front football. I thought their forwards really played well. There's not a huge difference in that Leinster pack from the guys that came in, and I mean that respectfully. It's phenomenal depth, but the back line and that execution is an issue for Munster, and just Leinster with limited ball just their timing looked so much better. That comes from confidence, self-belief as well, but look, the gap was only 1 point in the end, but it was 8 points, a minute or two before that, before Grobler gets a try, and you just felt Leinster had that bit of composure, and the emotional week and the lack of preparation. I think being at home saved their bacon. If they had to travel away, it would have been, much more difficult. But look, they got the job done. It shows how strong the squad is.
10 is clearly the problem position for Munster at the moment. What is the next most problematic position for Munster, and where do they need to sign in the summer?
It's depth. I think Tadhg coming in, they could do it another second row. If somebody gets injured, the problem Munster have, and look, it's down to restrictions within the RFU. Where do they get players? They're trying to develop younger players and bring them through. They're not jumping straight out of schools rugby and into the professional setup like possibly they are up here. We spoke about the numbers game, the effect that the school system is having on Leinster, and maybe the other provinces are not getting the same kind of bounce back from that situation. So I think another tight head maybe. They need, in an ideal world, you'd go out and sign a tight head, a second row and a fly half. They have Mike Haley coming in from Sale, who's a very, very good player, and Eddie Jones didn't want to leave him go.
He's Irish qualified.
He's Irish qualified. He's 23. Very, very good player. So I think back three, they have plenty of options. When they have Taute and Farrell fit, they have 4 or 5 options at centre. I think fly half has just been this position of uncertainty, inconsistency, nobody grabbing the bull by the horns. And at the top level of semi-finals of Europe or Pro 14, that's where it counts.
Matty, on the fly half issue, right? A lot of conversation about Munster in the market now for Joey Carberry. If Munster do get in the market for Joey Carberry, they can't sign him on a 1-year loan deal. They have to sign him and say, you're not here for 1 year, you have to come and join us full time, and you're throwing your lot in with us. This can't be the type of arrangement that they're talking about with Ulster, surely.
If I was Munster, I'd be offering him bit of West Clare as a gift to come down, because they need him. And if I take my Leinster hat off, Joey Carberry needs to start and needs to keep playing. And Johnny Sexton's going to play on and off for probably another 2-3 years. But Carberry needs to be starting. He needs to develop. And the only way you develop is by playing. And if he got a good offer, he should go. And as much as that'd break Leinster's heart, and I know Joey Carberry's heart is at Leinster, it would be a very, very good move for him, and a very good move for Munster. Look, in modern rugby, your halves are absolutely crucial. They probably have always been, but as defences have improved, and the science behind defence, which is easy to do, defence is easy, it's a negative. The negative is always easy. Attack is hard. Creating space and attacking that space, that is really, really hard. And you need a 9 and 10 that can do that. Now, Munster have got one of the best 9s in the world. And maybe if it was France, it might be slightly different. But they need, if you can shut down Conor Murray, you can pretty much shut down Munster. They need someone else out there. Now, they're letting Zubo go, or Zubo's going. Don't know if he's been let go, but he's going. So he had an X factor. Where's the rest of the X factor going to come from? And Quinny's right, but beyond that, they've got to catch and pass. They've got to have some basics, and they've got to make good decisions. 2 semi-finals in a row, Munster have walked away from points at crucial times in the game and gone for the sideline. And they've lost both Europe and the domestic league by a single point, by single points. If they had taken their points that were on offer, they would have done it. Now Quinny mentioned Ron O'Gara there. He would have taken those points. There's some really bad on-field decisions being made as well. And if they simply had to change a couple of those things, we'd be talking about something different. And we also have to put it in perspective. 2 semi-finals is not a disaster. It's not a train smash. It's not Ulster. But they are hanging in there. And for me, the starting point with Munster, as with every team, is honesty. Is for them and the whole organisation to get together and say, listen, where are we? And to stop trying to talk up, the passion and all that. Passion only gets you so far. And I wrote in the Irish Times the other day, when I coached against Quinny and these guys, you knew what you were getting. You were getting passion, but you were getting serious aggression and skill. And so you had to come there, don't take a knife to a gunfight. You had to come equally matched with that same passion, aggression, or you were getting out the gate by 40. This mob, this current Munster side, they can't be living on the coattails of past generations. They've got to establish their own brand. And they need to stop talking about it and they need to start acting it. And I feel there's a whole lot of those components coming into play with this current Munster group. And I agree with Quinny. I'm pretty critical on Coach Van Grant. I thought he's made some, especially in the Champions Cup semi-final, I thought he made some disastrous decisions and it was a disastrous build-up. Now, he's got this off-season to get it right. And everyone's going to be watching next year, but there's a lot of work to do in a lot of areas.
It is a huge off-season. I just want to bring up that point about the honesty, right? Because it does feel to me a little bit like we're only 1 score away, we only lost those games by a point, but they weren't really only 1 score behind Racing either. They weren't really only 1 score behind Leinster. So
behind Saracens last year in the semi-final, and Matt is right, they have to address this issue. I know they want to, and sometimes they're restricted. The problem they have, Matt, with the fly half position is they have JJ Hanrahan contracted, Tyler Blandale contracted, and Ian Keatley contracted. So they can't just go to the RFU and say, well, we want a world-class 10, give us a budget for it. Because the RFU rightly can say, well, you have got 3 already, so come to us with a plan or a solution where 1 or 2 of those guys are willing to move somewhere else. And so it's difficult. And the really valid point, and he mentioned Rog as well, and you look at Rog, Johnny Sexton, Wilkinson, iconic fly halves, which every team just can't have and you can't get, but you want to strive to get to that because you want your 10 out in the field to be your decision maker as well, to be your character, to be your backbone, to be your leader. So if you have a pack that delivers for your 9 and 10, you want those guys to steer you home and make good decisions, and you don't want to be getting up off the bottom of a ruck or defending a maul or winning a brilliant turnover and getting up and you see your backline executing and they're passing the ball into touch. It's criminal. And this stuff is happening too much. And it has to change. So they have to, look, if they've got to work with what they have for next season, Johan van Graan, Felix Jones, they've got to really, really find guys who can catch, pass and execute and get their timing right. Because to be fair, the endeavour is there and the effort levels. And that does give me some hope, Matt, that at least they're turning up. I criticised Munster 2 years ago because I felt guys were falling off tackles, the work rate, the effort wasn't there. So I think the hard part is the skill set, and that's something that really need to fix.
Yeah, I thought they turned up on Saturday in a much better mental state than they did in Bordeaux. The resolve of the forwards was there. They had a strong mauling day. The scrum fell away late in the game. I know they have some injuries in the front row, and the Leinster front row bench is very, very strong. Bringing Quinlan, Healy and Porter off the bench, wow, not many provincial teams can do that. But there were all the things you said, but the effort was better. But there needs to be, for everyone out there, when you played against Munster, they were ruthless. You know, they and I don't mean this metaphorically rather. They put their foot on your throat. You know, this was really tough rugby, and that challenge that the Munster generation set down for Leinster has created what Leinster is today, because Leinster rose to that challenge. You know, we knew we had to get down and fight just as hard if we were going to have any chance. Now, that Munster group have got to get back to that mentality. Okay, they turned up on Saturday and they were good. You know, they were competitive, but the final score flattered them in the last minute. They have to go back and get that ruthlessness, that dogged ability that we used to see from Munster teams. There's a great friend of ours, a guy called John Kelly. He gets annoyed at me every now and then, Johnny, when I say things about Munster. He wasn't a great player, but he was a great player. In other words, he didn't have a lot of talent that would push you up into that top echelons. But his own ruthlessness with himself and the way he played so far above his weight and his skill level, and was so wonderful for so many years. That's the mentality Munster have got to get back to. They got enough. There's enough talent there, but they're not ruthless on themselves. And as Queenie said, passing the ball into touch time and time again. In the two semi-finals, I reckon there might have been 12, maybe 15 passes. I haven't counted them. That just did not find the person next to them. Now, if you do that once or twice in a game, it's not good. But to have that number in two semi-finals, you've got a real problem with skill. And
Matty,
that has to be addressed.
Matt, great stuff this morning. We've got to leave it there. Thanks very much for joining us. Thanks to you as well, Alan.
We forgot to say that Leinster were good, and they'll be in great shape this week, because they have a position now where they can enjoy this week a little bit more. That emotional kind of high is gone, and you know, having the home game at the weekend rests.
The fact they've beaten them already, though, it's just like, oh, geez.
Oh, it's another challenge. They have to get up for this one, and Scarlets will sense. You talk about Munster's backlash, the rivalry. There's a big backlash coming from the Scarlets, and they were so much better. Johnny McNichol at full back for them, sensational player. They were brilliant.
Yeah. All right.
Should be a good one.
We've another couple of days to preview that one anyway. Still working on our fallout from that one. Okay, let's move on to the cup final and the fallout. Another red versus blue game at the weekend. This one again going the way of the blue team. It was blue all weekend, right? It was, yeah. As it turns out. So Chelsea beat Manchester United by a goal to 0. Andy Mitten is on the line, of course, of United We Stand. Andy, it is a very, very important off-season from José Mourinho's perspective. Before we get to what you'd like to see them do, what's the current state of play? Just what is the truth about where this squad is as regards to where they should be from a Manchester United perspective?
The current state of play is that the club don't want another close season of huge turnover of players. They feel that they've invested heavily in the last few years. So ideally they'd want 2 or 3 new players, and to retain all but 2 or 3 of the current players. So I'm seeing phrases like, let's clear the deadwood, this squad needs a complete renovation, we need to bring 7 or 8 players in. Certainly not the club's intention. There are a couple of factors you could add into that. It's not just down to who the club wants to sell and want to bring in. If there are players who actively want to leave, then that throws another spanner into the works. And there are a couple of players who are just not happy. Their problem is they're not going to get the same type of money that they get at Manchester United. So it's a question of if they want to leave and play for more minutes, then they're probably going to have to take a pay cut. But there's no desire from United to sell Anthony Martial, for example, even though he's not been happy with his relationship with José Mourinho could be much better. He's a deeply unhappy player, and that's not to say that his situation is not recoverable, and a lot of fans would back him because he's a very, very talented player. But since Saturday, there's a lot of despondency around. That could have been a chance for the season to finish on a high. Another defeat. The performances have been pretty poor since the derby win against Manchester City in April. And I feel that Manchester United and football perhaps need a break from each other at the moment.
Yeah, it's a funny situation for, I presume, most Manchester United fans to find themselves in, where the thing that brings them joy in life is supporting this team and everything that the team stands for, and yet here they are a little bit ground out by the team and the way that they're trying to play football. What's the way out of this? Like, because I still can't quite work out if José Mourinho is responsible for the squad of players that he has. And so it's hard for me to decide that Mourinho has agency over these players. He's responsible for them, therefore he holds all the blame, or if it's a squad that is a patchwork of other people's ideas about who should be the Manchester United players.
I wouldn't say anybody holds all of the blame. I'd say there's different percentages here, and Mourinho, given that he's been in charge for 2 years, certainly holds some responsibility. A lot of the players are his. Some of them are ones who he's inherited. But when I asked him when it was fair to judge him, he said after 3 years. So I think that's fair. I know that the club and a lot of fans, they don't want this continual change of new manager coming in saying everything needs to change here. He then needs 2 or 3 years to bring his own players in. And there has been some good results this year, some very good results, and there's been some decent performances as well. But there's frustration that it often takes United to go a goal behind before they start playing. And there's other external factors. The brilliance of Manchester City doesn't help anyone at Manchester United. It's Mourinho's biggest nightmare that 3 miles across the city, Pep Guardiola's doing so well. Liverpool doing so well in the Champions League, and all Liverpool fans looking forward to the game in Kiev and playing very good football with standout players. And I think Salah's got twice as many goals in the league as Romelu Lukaku this season. Now, I can remember having a conversation with someone close to Lukaku in October where he was saying he's absolutely determined to be the Premier League's top scorer this year. It means so much to him, and he's got half the goals of Salah. Now, I think Lukaku actually had a good first season at Old Trafford, but there are lots of issues. I mean, there's issues at every football club in the world. Every fan of every club will always be looking to try and make improvement. But while this is the best team since Ferguson, and those 81 points, it's to Mourinho's credit that he's got them and he's finished second. This is Manchester United. Well, there's players there who are coming and not improving as players. Paul Pogba, who's a hugely talented player, has had another pretty mediocre season. And there are others. Alexis Sanchez earns an absolute fortune. Now, he doesn't decide that. And he does get a little bit of a free pass because he needs time to settle in. But much more is expected of both of them next season.
Yeah, I want to pick up on the point that you make about Manchester United being a lot better to watch when they go 1 goal down, and I think FIFA should introduce some sort of law where Manchester United should always be given a 1 goal handicap because they're a much better team to watch as a neutral, from a neutral perspective. Like, it's interesting then when you say that there's different percentages of blame to put at different doors around Manchester United. Like, who do you credit to the performances for Manchester United when they are 1 goal down? Is that José Mourinho giving different tactics? Is it the players looking at themselves and saying, well, screw what we've already been told, we're going to play for ourselves now?
I think it's the way Mourinho sets up the team. At West Ham a couple of weeks ago, some of the players were unfamiliar with what was asked of them, and that can cause dissent within the ranks. Mourinho could push back from that and say, well, all of you surround yourselves by yes men. You all earn so much money that someone has to give you bad news in life, and I'm the one who has to do it. I'm the one who has to drop you. I'm the one who has to say that you're not playing well enough. And it just frustrates fans immensely when they go a goal behind or 2 goals behind against Crystal Palace, against Manchester City away, against Tottenham in the semi-final at Wembley, and only then they seem to play. And I don't know whether that's Mourinho on the side with an instruction, okay, play 10 yards further forward now, or a desperation, but it's certainly very frustrating for the fans to watch because it's not a one-off. And converse to that, when United take the lead, they usually win. There was only 2 games out of the 38 last season where United scored first and didn't win the match. And fans would just like a little bit more entertainment. It's not quite as bad as it was under Louis van Gaal. It's nowhere near as bad as it was under David Moyes. There definitely has been a progression, but the last 6 weeks has been very flat for United.
Are you one of those people who catastrophise the style of play because Mourinho has transmogrified from a manager who... So Eidur Johnson pre-match was talking about how when he was at Chelsea under Mourinho, the team was told to attack and they had brilliant attacking players right throughout the team. Now it seems as if the team are unbelievably structured and not quite, as you said, to the Van Gaal level of the never being able to stray out of their zones, but ultimately the sense is that Mourinho has changed football has changed the opposite direction, and he's becoming increasingly conservative as he gets older. And so therefore the style of play issue will never actually resolve itself under José Mourinho.
And yet, against Manchester City in the second half, they looked absolutely fantastic. Against Palace in the second half, they looked fantastic. There are definite issues with the style of play, and there's a disconnect between what the fans want and what the manager thinks is acceptable and what the club think is acceptable. Because for the club, from a financial perspective, finishing second is very good. It's acceptable. Playing in the Champions League, the players get the bonuses if they're playing in the Champions League. But it's utterly baffling when they play against Seville and don't start to play attacking football until they're a goal down. I think 160 minutes into the tie. It is so frustrating, and this is Manchester United, and expectations are much higher than that. I spoke to Ida Goodjohnson on Saturday at Wembley. I think he was enjoying it more than I was as a former Chelsea man, but he's one of many players I've spoken to who've played under Mourinho who idolise him. You know, players really like him. The more experienced ones, some of the younger ones, they don't like being called out in public, and they have some sympathy from some of the older players as well. His confrontational style, it isn't for everybody, but he's persisting with this. But somebody said to me on Saturday, okay, if you don't want Mourinho to continue, and I actually do, who would you have? Who would you have tomorrow? And I could only think of one person, and that was Pep Guardiola. And that's probably not going to happen. I know you could put a strong case for somebody like Carlo Ancelotti, plays good football, but again, you're getting into this cycle of the continual changes, and I don't think there's much appetite for that at Manchester United.
Yeah, and Pep last week, of course, mentioned his admiration for José Mourinho and Manchester United. Did you feel that was kind of almost patronising, a tap on the head, and almost playing the media game a little bit, because the words like being too hateful against Manchester United might bite him in the ass next year? Or do you feel that there is genuine admiration, that Pep Guardiola sees some sort of, maybe not tactical ingenuity, but some good ideas in this Manchester United team?
I think when you've got a 19-point advantage, it's easier to be magnanimous. But I can remember speaking to Guardiola when he was a young player at Barcelona, and he was very complimentary about Manchester United. His relationship with Sir Alex Ferguson is a strong one. They socialise together. Ferguson's told people who I know in private how much he respects the job that Guardiola's doing, how he's got, what I think he said, he's got them all adoring him and playing for him. And I don't think the same could be said of José Mourinho at Manchester United. There's definitely been improvements, not been a terrible season. Feels pretty bad since Saturday and in the weeks leading up to the cup final, and the Champions League wasn't good enough. That Seville result was absolutely horrific, but I don't think it's a case of ripping it all up and starting again at huge expense. And even if it does, I don't think there's much appetite from fans for bringing in these world-class players and being convinced that they're actually going to perform to the level of their reputation. People have been burnt now by Angel Di Maria arriving, Bastian Schweinsteiger arriving, and completely underwhelming at Old Trafford. And it's pretty sad that I'm saying that, but it's the truth.
Yeah, much better buying the Martials of the world and trying to turn them into players who can ultimately become first-team players over a period of time. That's the main issue, I think, here, is that Rashford and Martial, those type of players, that coterie of exciting young players who are at the club now, either through the academy or having been bought in, haven't stepped up to be dominant world-class players. You know, so Salah comes in and embarrasses the whole league by being relatively cheap in retrospect as a potential world star. That's the difficulty with football, is that you look 20 miles down the road and suddenly players are performing at a superstar stratospheric level, and maybe it's unfair, but that's the game.
It is the game, and Manchester United dominated and beat Liverpool when they last met, and yet Liverpool are the ones going to the Champions League final. It can infuriate as well as delight people. To be fair to Mourinho, Rashford's had chances and Martial's had chances. They've just not produced as consistently as they should do. They're both immensely talented, especially Martial has got absolutely everything. And I hear United fans complaining, he's surly, he's not happy, he doesn't want to be here. I went to his estate in Paris last month where he's from. I spoke to his family, I spoke to his coaches. They will tell you a completely different picture of Martial. Then again, they're more predisposed to, because he's one of their own. But the perception which United fans have isn't always an accurate one. And I think confidence levels among some of the players and a frustration with the manager. And again, it's nothing like as bad as it was under Van Gaal. I know one senior player who was castigated because he turned up in the canteen 2 minutes late. And this is a guy with hundreds of Manchester United appearances under his belt. And he said, I cannot work under this man anymore. I'm leaving. And he left. There's not that with José Mourinho. But I think when things don't go entirely to plan, there is a culture of blame. And United players are not... I think they're still having the manager. I think they'll still work for him. But at times like this, there's definitely frustration. And probably from him to his players as well, because they're not playing as well as they should be.
Who do you want them to sign, or what positions are the most important positions of need? Fullback seems an obvious one.
Yeah, well, I know that they're looking at a left back. I know they're looking at a right back. I know they're looking at a central midfielder. I've asked a lot about Alexandro, the Brazilian who plays for Juventus. He was asking questions of Manchester United long before he signed for Juventus. He was asking Juventus players who'd been at Manchester United all about Manchester United. But it's all right me saying that. If Juventus say they don't want to sell him or they want too much for him, then that complicates things further. A right back, because Matteo Darmian, he's not really fulfilled what was hoped of him. Antonio Valencia is getting on a bit now. Not had a great season. He did very, very well last season, but not this. And then a midfielder, because Michael Carrick has moved on. Marouane Fellaini might move on, so that might leave a shortage there. And at the moment, they're not looking to sell any of the strikers, but if a striker looks to push out and leave, that could complicate things. And then I'm a little bit worried about the over-reliance on one number 9 on Romelu Lukaku, but then around him he's got 5 or 6 players, that many, who should all be contributing more and scoring more. I mean, an Alexis Sanchez on form or a Jesse Lingard on form could be great assets for Manchester United. Problem is, Lingard had 2 good months around Christmas. Alexis Sanchez has had 5 games, good games tops. And one of them was against Yeovil, who were the 91st club out the 92.
Just one last question from me, Andy. We're probably going to be sitting here chatting to you in 12 months' time, regardless of what is going on at Manchester United. And I know there's a lot of stuff is going to happen between now and then. Do you think we're going to be sitting here at the end of next season and it's going to be as simple as this, that either A, Manchester United have won the Premier League and José Mourinho is going to go into his 4th season as Manchester United manager, or B, Manchester United haven't been anywhere near the Premier League and José Mourinho has already lost his job?
I think they've got to get closer to the Premier League. I cannot see United closing that 19-point gap in 12 months. I think you've just got to be realistic and accept that sometimes football is cyclical. And this Manchester City team are great. Now, something could go wrong there. I saw Guardiola closely at Barcelona and his fuse just burnt out and he had to move on. There's no signs of that at Manchester City at the moment. And I know people who know him very well saying he's delightfully happy with Manchester. Which is obviously to the frustration of Manchester United fans. I think they need to make a more serious challenge on the Premier League. I think they've got to do much better in Europe than get to that last 16 point and freeze against a very inconsistent team who Sevilla were this year. And I don't see any major changes, but Paul Pogba, Martial, the players who I've mentioned, they really need to play better to fulfil the potential, and United need to keep hold of people like David De Gea. He's a world-class goalkeeper, but could you blame him for pushing to go to Real Madrid right now? No. Really? You're from Madrid?
No, definitely not.
You know, you're going to go to a club that wins the European Cup most years, or you're going to stay at one that doesn't.
A brilliant tweet here from Emmett Keane says, at Andy Mitten has a very strong Skype game. Correct camera distance, check. Backdrop of books, check. Smart shirt, check. None of your shaky handheld iPhone shots up the nose with Andy. So indeed, you have definitely got one of the best Skype connections we've ever had. And
look at all my football books behind me.
We were just about to ask. Definitely one of the most impressive bookshelves that we've seen. What's your favourite? Apart from your own books, you can't answer any of your own 600 books.
I have a great passion for books and for printed material, and I love reading about history which has nothing to do with football. I've got some good books about Irish history which I plan to read over the summer. I intend not to travel for 2 months. I'm sick of getting on aeroplanes. I love my job a lot, but I'm absolutely exhausted if I'm honest. Best footballer books? Well, Cascarino's autobiography was fantastic. Eamon Dunphy's book on Manchester United was fantastic. Roy Keane's autobiographies were both fantastic. And that's enough pro-Irish sentiment with my books. I'm just finishing off one with Patrice Evra at the moment. And I'm just up to a section where he has a slight altercation with a fan last November, and that is not dull. Trust me. So maybe when that comes out, I can try and get him on the show. Maybe even bring him over to Dublin.
That would be class. We hold you to that. Andy, good stuff. Enjoy your holidays. Well deserved. Thanks a million, man.
Thanks for having me.
That's Andy Mitten. Worth a follow on Twitter as well. His season this year, we obviously have had him on a good bit. Took him down to Brazil, took him down to Argentina. There was a lot of travel involved. The piece about Anderson was class.
That was brilliant. That was just one of those opportunities where you can go back and get wistful about a player that you never really thought you would ever do that with. Because kind of in the here and the now with Anderson, it was never kind of a moment of like, we would look back on this guy with great admiration in the years to come, but that's exactly what we did. It's... I wonder, does he enjoy his job more under José Mourinho?
I'd say...
Not under José Mourinho, because he doesn't work for José Mourinho, but I mean, during the José Mourinho reign at Manchester United.
I'd say you've got to think that working while Ferguson was there, even though every press conference was like, ooh, if I just asked the wrong thing here, I might not be allowed back, must have been most exciting. Because that, when you look back, that period of time, that team, those characters, that was the beginning of the building of the empire. And nothing ever equals that again.
No.
Like these Real Madrid teams at the moment, they're brilliant to watch, right? And there is soap opera, but what makes them stand out? What makes them different from all the other Real Madrid teams? They're just another Real Madrid team who has a slew of Galacticos but the foundational text, the ones that get written by the people who chisel it out of nothing, they're the ones that you remember the most.
Well, we are living in the era of the statistic, and statistics will prove that potentially this Real Madrid team has the greatest goal scorer of all time in its ranks. So, I mean, is it Cristiano Ronaldo versus Alfredo Di Stefano? I mean,
well, it's Ronaldo's team. At least that's what you're covering with that, as opposed to, it's not even Zidane's team. It doesn't feel like it's Zidane's team. Like, he might do this remarkable thing, and it'll be like, well, it's really Ronaldo's team.
Could still lose his job if they have another poor La Liga season. Yeah, for sure.
Iniesta sitting on the pitch until 1 o'clock last night.
Yeah, I mean, a goodbye to it. Is that 1 o'clock? That's clearly still on. Just kind of reflecting on himself, reflecting on an unbelievable career at Barcelona. Obviously came to an end last night.
I bet he's making a documentary. There's this unbelievable footage of Pep emptying his bag for the last time. I'm like, that's all a bit wanky, isn't it? But it was clearly staged. So I bet you Iniesta is there with his 5 camera teams going, have you got the shot? 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 Colour me cynical.
Can you just look a little bit more sad there, Andres?
Yeah. And action. Done? Okay, well, we go.
Can you make your kid cry there as well, Andres?
So there is that Guardiola. It's one of those Sky documentaries. Or maybe Sky didn't make it, but certainly it's people talking to him. And there is this footage of him, like, for the last time. You're like, wow, that's amazing that they filmed this. And you're thinking, he agreed to that. He wanted this to be recorded for posterity.
I'm sure Pep Guardiola has emptied his bag in dramatic fashion many a time over the past couple of months because, of course, the new Manchester City Amazon Prime documentary is set to come out over the next couple of weeks. So,
and action.
I'm looking forward. We should do a montage of all the dramatic cutaways of Pep, in the background, taking his boots and putting them into his bag again.
That one was from the official UEFA Champions League Twitter account. So, anyway, right, let's move on. Stop being cynical. Sinead Carroll and Gary O'Toole were on the pay-per-view yesterday afternoon with Joe, and they were talking about how the GAA in particular is covered. Have a look.
You pick up the papers today, and everything about the GAA is negative. You pick up the title inside in the Mail, and you go headline after headline. The first few pages are not about GAA. They're about the Williams coming back to play in the French Open, Leinster doing well, keeping the dream alive. And then you go, grim night for Armagh as Iron Men march on, no shock and awe at Central Stadium, ballroom without romance about my home county of Wicklow not being allowed to take on Dublin and Auckram. And then you go, it's clear that Mayo will never learn from their mistakes. and then you keep going on. The Banner's Burden, it's all negative. So you then go to the Sunday Independent, and my go-to columnist is Colm O'Rourke, and then you ring Joe Brolly. Can football get any worse, is what Colm O'Rourke says, and then Joe Brolly again doesn't want to talk. He talks about, he gives 2 sentences to the game that he went to last week in the Mayo-Galway game, and he said it was absolutely awful. But these are the pundits, these are the people writing about the sport. They cannot write in such negativity and expect the public to turn up, and because they influence people. You open the paper this morning, I read Frano and say, do I agree with Frano, or does Frano think the way I think? And people are turning or opening their papers and saying, do I agree with Colm O'Rourke today? And he's negative, and then it just gets into the people's psyche that this is just this is a negative campaign. It's our national sport. We can't do this.
Brilliant point.
It is a brilliant point, but at what stage has Colm O'Rourke or Joe Brolly ever been told that they have to be, advocates and advertisers?
But no one's saying that. It's that they're so that's not what he's saying either. He's not.
No, I know he's not.
He's not looking for a Pollyanna kind of everything is brilliant, it's all amazing. It's like if everything all the time is shit, then what's the point?
I take his point, and also as well, there's contradictions in all of this as well. I mean, Colm O'Rourke and Joe Brolly will be the first people to advocate more people getting involved in Gaelic games, to say that this is the salt of the earth, heart of the community. This is what this country is based on, Gaelic games, and then go ahead and completely lambast it on a daily basis, as in what is the point? There is contradictions within that, and I agree on that point. We can see up on screen here Patrick Ory's tweet. Can football get any worse? As Gary O'Toole alluded to there. We get it. All right, I missed the end of that tweet.
Yeah, we get a column. Can the Champions Cup final get any worse? Can the FA Cup final get any worse? Mayo Galway was as poor, but only as poor as those games. Question should be, can football punditry get any more negative? There is definitely a weird, did you enjoy that?
Yeah, well,
element to the punditry as opposed to, why is this happening before us?
Yeah, I completely agree. And there was a sense of triumphalism about the Sunday game last night when Pat Spillane and Kieran Whelan were patting each other on the back because they enjoyed an Ulster football game. It's like, first of all, I don't care what you thought in terms of your own personal pleasure that you experienced while watching those games.
That's between you and the privacy of whoever it is, or if it's on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can enjoy, you can get a certain sense of pleasure from a football game if you want, Pat. I've got no problem with that, but I don't particularly care. No. I want to hear why Tyrone were poor yesterday against Monaghan, not that the game was poor from your perspective of what the neutral might think. You know what? Different people like different things. I didn't
No. There's a traditional style of football. Let's catch and kick, and that's it.
How could I forget?
That's the right answer. Yep.
How could I forget? Yes. I mean, if you're not an aristocrat of football and playing like Kerry in the 1980s, then go home, basically.
Some comments. Derek says, hi there, I'm listening in from Vietnam. While I'm not an avid GAA follower, I do still have an interest, but Tommy Walsh is a joy to listen to, educating, insightful, amusing, enthusiastic, and incredibly engaging and amusing. A second amusing there, just in case you missed it. He's an effervescent and wildly entertaining man. I could listen to him all day long. Hashtag OTB AM. Brian Duggan, what's going on in Tip? Are they fighting amongst themselves again? I mean, this is the question. If Michael Ryan comes out and goes, yeah, we play badly, got to fix that next week. We will fix that for next week, and everybody in there, training's going to be sharp this week, and some lads are going to get dropped.
The thing about Michael Ryan is he's got a hidden talent for saying nothing at all in a press conference. He's never interesting. So he should have just come out and just been himself. I mean, he is never interesting in his press conferences. Or they're not even conferences. No matter what interview he does, Michael Ryan has never said anything interesting in the history of mankind. And, he would have got away with it. He would have got away with saying nothing at all.
Noel Kyle says, what has happened to Tipperary's movement in forward? Route 1, shite hurling. Hashtag OTBAM. Certainly that is the view that was expressed. I mean, if you listened or if you were watching Shane Stapleton on the Hurling Show last Friday afternoon here on offtheball.com, then I don't think it's a massive surprise to you the style of play that Tip used, and he's been kind of on that bandwagon now for a while. In fact, he may well be driving the coach and horses out of that bandwagon, and certainly those concerns were made manifest at the weekend. So there you go, there's an all-cast tweet. The next one is, good morning from New York, lads, says Seamus Collum. You are up early or / late? Fair play, Seamus.
Yeah, early is the answer to that one. I wish it was late. Doing an all-nighter and then coming in here afterwards would be an interesting experiment. So you can go ahead and be the guinea pig in that one, Ger.
I know him. He's still going at 3:30 in the morning.
Oh, sorry, you're saying that to him.
Yeah.
I thought that was the nature of his comment to us. Thanks. Sorry for answering a question you didn't even ask there.
That's half nine. Nor the world's best goalkeeper. Can he kick a 45 like Rory Began though? Asks John McHugh. No, he can't. So you're actually saying now Rory Began is the best goalkeeper in the world?
In the world, yeah, absolutely. You should go to the World Cup.
Somebody who says themselves, talking Leinster, I think Off the Ball needs to drop their crusade to get Carberry to move province specifically to Munster. There is no crusade talking. You should be paying attention. I don't want Joey Carberry to go anywhere. It's
just talking sense.
It's Owen who wants him to go. No, I want him to stay.
I'm just making the correct point for everybody, all the parties involved here. Gerard's got his thigh and Leinster hat on. Just one last point on Leinster before we wrap things up. I felt on Saturday it was, you know, at the end of like a TV season when you're watching it and like a new villain emerges after the credits or something, and it's like, oh, I can't wait for season 4 because there's this new really dark villain. That's what I felt like when Max Deegan makes the last play of the game. It's like, oh God, Leinster are so bloody good. They're going to get better. And like you listened to Quinny earlier on, Munster are obviously going to improve next season, you would suspect. But there is no question Leinster will get better.
You live in Dublin now. You can support Leinster. It's fine. Just get a Leinster jersey. It's fine. No one will ever hold it against you. You can get a half and half Leinster and Kerry jersey.
I'd rather be an Ulster fan.
It's what's going to happen next. I mean, I know you're lying now. Here's a clip from our Irish Rugby Sevens doc from last week. Owen and Joe popped out to their training session at Donnybrook before they jetted off to Moscow, and it was a successful week for them. They won. They conceded just one try on the way to winning the second Moscow Sevens title. So congratulations to the lads, and they're your new buddies.
Yeah, BFFs, bestos, whatever the kids call it these days.
We're going to hear from Harry McNulty and first Mark Roach.
It's perfect for kids starting to learn the game, develop the core skills like passing, one-on-one tackling, kicking, throwing. So, you know, has all those core skills that you need for the 15s game, and you're sprinting, you're running, and your agility, all that. But you definitely need, I think, sevens in every country, every rugby country, because you know it's just so important with all those core skills.
You can just get some more opportunities here. You've got 7 guys on a pitch, so there's half the amount of people, there's more space. So say if you've been struggling in the 15s game because you're not getting the ball enough, you're not getting those breaks that you think you should be getting, you come down, you play a bit of sevens, you get that confidence back, you make a few breaks, you score a few tries, you get your one-on-one tackling down to a T, because every tackle is a one-on-one tackle. You miss it, the team's probably going to score a try. If they don't score a try, they're probably going 80 metres. So it really puts you under a lot of pressure, but then it also allows you to develop your skills and get your confidence back. And then when you go back into the 15s game, you're riding on a great wave of confidence and energy, and you know that you can back yourself in those situations, and I think it's proved, especially for a lot of those players going back to their provinces, to really been helpful. Adam Byrne, he played me in my first season. Tom Daly, who's just coming back from an injury. There's Barry Daly, Alex Wooten, Nick Timoney as well, Dan Goggin. There's so many players that I can name off, but those guys have all come through the Sevens program at one stage, and they've been absolutely flying it down to their provinces, and some of you even got Irish caps.
You can see the full thing there on youtube.com/off the ball, which is where we put all of our extended pieces of content, and you should just hit the subscribe button on that for all of our good stuff. 3 final comments for you. Juan Jose, lads, don't underestimate how much Dublin would relish going to Clonus, Castlebar or wherever. I mean, it's true, but at least there is like the 4-point advantage that they have from being in Croke Park wiped off the scoreboard at the start.
Were we even talking about this today? Like, I mean, that's the oldest thing in the book. I mean, the Dubs like going to different places around the country. Of course they do. We all like going to different places around the country. We all like travelling. We all like going on tour. You know, the Hill 16 on tour is the very definition lads on tour was invented. That's why that awful phrase was first uttered, I presume, when they went to Thurles in 2001. Of course, everybody knows that Dublin like to go to different parts of the country. I don't know, like, were we talking about this today?
Yeah, we were talking about whether or not, how we would manufacture it so that the Dubs would have to go to Clonus to play Monaghan.
Oh, yeah. Well, like, I don't think...
It's a long show, it hasn't been that long.
I don't think either of us disagreed with the idea that they would love to go to Clonus. The neutral would love for that game to be in Clonus. It would be an amazing moment of the summer. You need Monaghan to lose next. If they lose in the Ulster final, it's game over. They will not be in Dublin's group. They need to get into Dublin's group via the back door.
Dublin are going to play one away match. It's probably going to be like, who's going to be the worst team to make the Super 8s?
Exactly, because the GAA want the big games in Croke Park. Because what does that lead to, Ger?
Money.
Exactly, yeah, correct.
Porrick Neelan says, I have a lovely half-acre site for Joey Carberry here in West Clare. Done deal, send him down at Munster Rugby. It was Matty Williams saying that they should go down and offer him a nice part of Clare. that would be nice.
Any part of Clare is nice by all accounts.
Rory O'Hanlon says Sanchez has been a disaster. 500 grand a week, no idea what position he's playing in. It's not his job really to pick the position he's playing in. That's part of the Mourinho issue. It's that the style of play where he's trying to get these players all to be connected, but actually not really coaching them. It doesn't seem there's anybody saying, this is what we're trying to do, this is the intention, this is how we attack when we're attacking. It's like, you're really good, you guys pass to each other, work it out, you're grand. We're paying you a combined £1 million a week here. Do something with it.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem like José's been completely hands-off here. It seems like the structure is almost killing these guys and their entrepreneurship on the pitch. Like, you look at Sanchez in that position for Arsenal, and he was a hell of a lot better than he was for Manchester United in that position as a centre forward, and that is saying a lot because he wasn't that good for Arsenal in that position.
I mean, they could sell Sanchez, cash in, and move on. That wouldn't be the worst thing.
If he would go, I mean,
of course he's going to go. We can save money anywhere. Doesn't matter.
Really?
We got to go too. Speaking of that, the lads are back on the radio tonight from 7 o'clock, looking back on an absolutely epic weekend of GAA. There'll be rugby, there'll be football as well. A football show is going to roll on all the way through to obviously the Champions League final next weekend, but then of course the World Cup too. So we'll be back tomorrow morning bright and early from 7:45. If you haven't told your friends about us yet, then go ahead, do it now, and make sure you subscribe to our podcast as well. We're on iTunes, we're on Stitcher, we are wherever they do these podcasts these days. Offtheball.com for more details. Good luck.
OTB AM.
In association with Air. Get Air Sport free with Air Broadband.